Thank you for joining us for BC's Office of the Human Rights Commissioner's web-based learning sessions on misinformation. This session answers the question, what is misinformation and why does it matter? While we use the general term misinformation here to describe all types of false or misleading information, later in the session we'll explore and define three related terms: misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And you can learn more about BC's Office of the Human Rights Commissioner at the end of this session. We'd like to acknowledge that BC's Office of the Human Rights Commissioner, also known as BCOHRC, is situated on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. This acknowledgement is particularly important to include in our misinformation mini-bites. BCOHRC is mandated to promote and protect the human rights of everyone in our province. Due to colonization and the laws, policies, and practices that continue to impact them, Indigenous peoples are among those groups whose human rights are most at risk in our province. As we will consider in more detail in Mini-Bite 3, misinformation is a human rights issue and causes significant harms to Indigenous peoples. So acknowledging the territories we work and live on as unceded Indigenous territories is a first step in promoting and protecting the human rights of Indigenous peoples. BCOHRC's sessions on misinformation are broken into 5 sections that we are calling mini-bites. Bite-sized pieces of content that you can pick and choose from based on you and your group's learning needs. Each mini-bite focuses on a specific topic. And the mini-bites build on each other, so we invite you to watch them in order. But you can also select to watch only the mini-bites that interest you the most. The mini-bites were developed to allow individual, self-paced learning, as well as for group learning within institutions and organizations. These recordings were developed with accessibility in mind. You're welcome to adjust the speed of these recordings to meet your needs. And for closed captioning, click on the CC button and select the captioning language. The mini-bites use 2 types of interaction to support learning. The first type of interaction is reflection. Facilitators will invite you to pause and reflect throughout the session. Consider pausing the recording, reflecting on the question, and recording your reflections in Handout 1 of the Handouts package. You can pause the recording now and download the handout package using the button beside this recording on our Misinformation Can You Stop It webpage. Or you may prefer to record your reflections on paper. If so, consider having a pen and paper handy. The second type of interaction is through our fillable handout. Handout packages are provided for each mini-bite. And some of the handout pages are formatted as fillable forms that you can complete after viewing the mini-bite. The handout package also includes links to the examples of misinformation we share in this session. The package also includes the sources we use to identify that these were examples of misinformation. In addition to the recordings and handout packages, a PDF of each mini-bite is available beside each mini-bite recording on our Misinformation Can You Stop It webpage.
These mini-bites were developed to support all residents of BC in understanding, identifying, and taking action to address misinformation. We acknowledge that participants viewing these mini-bites come to these sessions with different backgrounds, identities, and experiences, including exposure to different sources of information. All of these factors contribute to our different ways of making sense of the world around us and how we identify what we believe to be true or untrue and what is important to us. Misinformation may also contribute to these understandings. It is important to acknowledge that everyone can be influenced by misinformation. No matter what our political views, values, or opinions, there are examples of misinformation that have been developed to mislead us. The goal of these mini-bites is to deepen our understanding of what misinformation is, why it's important to address, the strategies it uses to mislead us, how it impacts all of our human rights, and what we can do to protect ourselves and others from misinformation. This mini-bite focuses on the first two learning goals. What is misinformation, and why is it important to address it? To illustrate this, we have selected a variety of examples of misinformation. We have made an effort to use examples that target people with different political views, values, and opinions. For each example, we will provide evidence-based information that disproves the misinformation, along with the source of this information. Let's take a minute to consider feelings of discomfort that you may experience while viewing these mini-bites. Our brains work by accepting or rejecting new information based on whether and how it conforms to our current understanding. This can make learning easier because it helps us to categorize and remember new pieces of information. But it can limit learning by preventing us from considering new ideas, even if they're true. Misinformation benefits from these processes by sending us information that conforms with our understandings, encouraging us to reject ideas that contradict these understandings, and gradually moving us on to believing related ideas that aren't true. Because of these learning processes, when we encounter information that's different from our understanding, we can experience feelings of discomfort. These feelings of discomfort may show up as guilt, shame, denial, or a desire to shut down. But this discomfort can be an important first step in transformational learning, as we pause to reflect on our beliefs and consider adopting different understandings, attitudes, and behaviors. While viewing these mini-bites, if you experience feelings of discomfort, it may be helpful to be curious about what that discomfort is by asking, why am I feeling this way, and what can I learn from it? Discomfort is not the same as harm. To illustrate how misinformation is a human rights issue, these mini-bites include examples of misinformation that target groups based on their identity, such as race, gender, or disability. These examples may bring up memories of harm that you or those you care about have experienced. Please do what you need to do to take care of yourselves throughout the session. This could include pausing the recording and stepping away for a minute, taking a few deep breaths, or refreshing your beverage. A list of supports to access after the session is available in the handouts package.
Take a minute to reflect on the questions on the slide, and feel free to pause the recordings while you reflect. The first question is, what does misinformation mean to you? And using your current understanding of misinformation, reflect on the following questions. Are you concerned about it? Why or why not? You can record your responses in question 1 on handout 1 if you find that helpful. A giant interactive cell phone has been traveling around the province to draw attention to the large problem of misinformation contained in the little devices we keep in our pockets. A quiz appears on the screen of this giant cell phone, and people taking the quiz were invited to answer and explain whether they were concerned about misinformation. BC's Human Rights Commissioner, Kasari Govender, also explained why our office chose to run this campaign. Let's look at what the Commissioner and quiz participants had to say.
Behind me here, I have a giant cell phone that's really meant to draw attention to the thing that we use all the time from the moment we wake up in the morning all the way through the day. And it's feeding us all kinds of information through all our different social media sources and beyond. And from that information, some of it is true and some of it is not. And the issue is that the information that isn't true often leads us to stereotyping, perpetuates hate and inequality, even if we don't realize we're being caught up in the trap. Hi, I'm Kasari Govender, I'm BC's Human Rights Commissioner, and today we are launching a campaign on mis and disinformation called STOP, and it's designed to stop the spread of misinformation in our province. We launched this campaign about mis and disinformation because we know what a significant driver it is of the rise of hate and discrimination in the province. And we know what a significant issue it is in our communities, in interfering with democracy. We know that the majority of people in our province think this is a real concern and think, for example, that it has impacted elections in the past, and that it is very difficult and increasingly difficult to tell the difference between fact and fiction.
The biggest risk of using misinformation is that people act over misinformation. So they see it, they believe it, and then act upon that. That's the biggest risk, in my opinion.
One of the risks I see is that with so much of the uncontrollable misinformation, people can feel quite overwhelmed and perhaps a sense of despair, that they feel like there is so much out there they cannot control. But really, as an individual, we do have a choice in choosing what we share on our own social media platforms. So yeah, I see that sense of information overwhelm leading to some mental health problems. But then again, remembering that we can shape the information we want to see and hear.
Sometimes people were afraid to go against the flow because if a lie is told so many times, people start to believe that it's true. And I think that's when misinformation gets really, really bad and really violent, especially on social media.
I am extremely concerned with misinformation because so many people are not literate enough to realize when something is real or fake. And if people get scammed both into like giving their money away or doing stuff like that, that's not great for anyone. But also if we give misinformation about like what's happening politically or stuff like that, like that's terrible for our world, honestly.
In the video, participants shared many reasons for their concerns about misinformation. Participants told us they were concerned about misinformation because they are coming across it more frequently, it is difficult to distinguish from real information, it targets specific groups, it contributes to divisiveness and polarization, and it provokes harmful actions. Commissioner Governor also shared some of her concerns about misinformation, including that it appears more frequently on social media and is increasingly difficult to distinguish from accurate and verifiable information. She noted additional concerns, including that it contributes to stereotyping and the rise of hate, discrimination, and inequality, and it interferes with democracy. We'll look at how misinformation harms us in more detail in Mini-Bite 3. But for now, take a minute to reflect on your responses to the reflection questions we asked you on the previous slide. After watching and reflecting on the video, do you have any additional concerns about misinformation? Feel free to pause this recording to reflect and to add additional ideas to Reflection Question 1 in Handout 1.
So far, we've asked you to reflect on your understanding of misinformation and whether and why it concerns you. We've used the term misinformation in our campaign to refer to three different but related concepts: misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Let's take a few minutes now to consider each of these terms. You may be familiar with some or all of them, but it's okay if one or all are new to you. The goal of this session is to understand them better. Take a second to reflect on your understanding of each term. Are you familiar with any of them? And if so, what do they mean to you? Can you think of examples that you have mistaken for real information and shared on social media? You might want to pause the recording while you reflect. You can record your thoughts in Handout 1, Reflection Question 2. Misinformation is false information that is shared by people who believe it to be true. This post is about two men from Canada's Atlantic coast catching a 320-pound shrimp in the St. Lawrence River. The image was created from an original photo of two men holding a Wels catfish that they caught in a river in Italy. This post has been widely shared over time. We can identify two possible reasons people may have chosen to reshare this post. They may have reshared it because they believed it was true, or they may have understood it as a humorous post that everyone would identify as false. In both cases, they were sharing misinformation as they believed it was real, either as true content or as a joke. We have included a link to more information about this example, as well as other examples shared in this mini bite in handout 2. The creator of this post knew that the content was not real. As false information was knowingly shared, the creators were sharing disinformation. We'll look at another example on the next slide.
Disinformation is false information that is knowingly shared. Creators of disinformation manipulate our understanding of issues to achieve specific goals. These goals may include causing harm, benefiting personally or politically, and/or creating conflict or division. The following social media post is an example of disinformation that was developed to scam people into investing money by the company Quantum AI. The post manipulated existing images and videos of Mark Carney to make it look like he was endorsing this investment. We will discuss strategies to use to confirm whether posts are misinformation in Mini Bite 4, but we'll briefly share our approach for this post now. To identify whether this post was real or misinformation, we consulted several news sources, including a CTV news article, and we confirmed the reliability of the news article by using Media Bias Fact Check, a website that rates news sources for bias and credibility. Media Bias Fact Check rated CTV News as being least biased and its factual reporting as high, leading us to trust this source when it identified the post as a hoax. Online scams such as this one are one example of how disinformation is intentionally created to harm people and/or benefit the person or organization that develops it. While Mark Carney was not involved in this scam, a follow-up piece of disinformation was shared in the online web news source Canuck Post. The Canuck Post article described the Quantum AI scam as intentionally developed by Mark Carney. By claiming that Mark Carney is defrauding Canadians and referring to the Federal Liberal Party as a corrupt regime that condones white-collar crimes, the Canuck Post article portrayed a message that we should not trust Mark Carney and the Liberal Party of Canada. Similarly, this type of political disinformation has been created and shared to increase mistrust in right-wing and/or socially conservative political parties. For example, several social media posts claim that federal conservative candidate Pierre Poilievre had accumulated a vast personal fortune of over $25 million. These posts were used to discredit Poilievre's criticism of Mark Carney's wealth. To identify whether these posts were real or misinformation, we consulted several news sources, including a CBC News article. Media Bias Fact Check identifies CBC News as high for factual reporting. The article confirmed these posts as disinformation. Handout 2 includes links to these examples of disinformation, as well as to the articles that disprove them.
Malinformation is misinformation that starts with something that is true, but presents this information in an incomplete or exaggerated way in order to cause harm. Malinformation intentionally misleads us by omitting the context, focusing on one issue, and omitting important content. We often see malinformation used when presenting evidence in a way that makes it look scientifically proven, such as in efforts to contest global warming. Many of us have heard, read, or seen posts similar to this one. It says, "This is the coldest year on record. So much for global warming." This is malinformation because it handpicks a tiny portion of evidence, the coldest year ever. but it ignores all other information that has been scientifically proven about climate change and global warming. One important fact that it omits is the fact that climate and weather are not the same thing. Weather can change from day to day, but climate refers to long-term trends. There is plenty of clear and undisputable evidence that our climate is warming over time. This leads to devastating impacts, including increased forest fires, floods, damaging storms, droughts, and increases in pests that destroy crops and forests. This example of malinformation causes harm because it can lead us to disregard the threats of global warming. It also paves the way for policy decisions that put our planet at risk. Now that we've explored the three types of misinformation, we encourage you to reflect on additional examples of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation that you may have noticed or shared unintentionally. You can post these examples in Handout 3 now or after completing the mini-bite. Handout 3 also includes definitions for each term.
Now that we've considered what misinformation is and why it is a concern, let's take a minute to watch this short video. The video uses an invented example of misinformation to provide a brief introduction to what misinformation is and why it is a concern. While watching the video, reflect on how it compares with your understanding.
What if I told you that birds are committing crimes? Maybe you don't believe me, but maybe your mom does. She sees a post about it online and shares it with her friends. Your city councilor sees how many people are getting upset about the criminal birds, so they run for re-election on an anti-bird campaign and set up a Crime Stoppers line to report sightings. Maybe it seems impossible that anyone would believe all of this, but maybe it feels real. And soon, the birds and the people who are scared of them stop feeling safe. We all want to understand the world around us and protect what we care about. But in a world of endless information, not everything we see or share is true. Misinformation works because it plays on what we already believe or fear. Take birds and crime. You might already think of some birds as sneaky or mischievous by nature. But when information gets left out or altered, some birds are sneaky can become something else. The more social media plays to our emotions, the more divided we become. And when we stop trusting information or make decisions based on misinformation, people and communities are harmed. Neighbors become enemies. We all have the right to accurate information. It's a human right, and we all have some control. When we stop before we share, together, we protect human rights. Visit bchumanrights.ca/stop to learn more.
We have included a link to this video and to a guide that you can use to facilitate conversations in Handout 3. Let's take a minute to introduce the different mini-bites in this series. You're coming to the end of Mini-Bite 1. What is misinformation and why does it matter? Mini-Bite 2 answers the question, how does misinformation work? In Mini-Bite 3, we will consider why misinformation is a human rights issue. Mini-Bite 4 focuses on how we can stop the spread of misinformation. Finally, Mini-Bite 5 looks at examples of actions we can take to limit the impact of misinformation. Throughout this mini-bite, we have seen that many of us are concerned about misinformation, especially as it occurs in the forms of disinformation and malinformation. But despite our growing awareness of the threats that misinformation poses to all of us, as both Commissioner Govender and the campaign participants shared in the video, misinformation is appearing more frequently and becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish from real information. To identify misinformation, it's helpful to understand the strategies those creating disinformation use to lead us astray. We will look at how misinformation works in Mini-Bite 2.
Before ending this session, we'll introduce our office. BC's Office of the Human Rights Commissioner was reinstated in 2019 after a 17-year absence. BC's Human Rights Commissioner is Kasari Govender. The Commissioner has a specifically systemic mandate that is established by law. This means that the Commissioner and her office are responsible for identifying the underlying causes of inequality, discrimination, and injustice in BC, rather than only the ways they show up in individual incidents. Our vision is a province in which everyone's human rights are respected and our responsibilities to one another are met. We do this by shifting laws, policies, practices, and cultures. BC's Human Rights Commissioner is an independent officer of the legislature. This means that the Commissioner reports directly to the legislature and our office is nonpartisan and acts independently of the political party in power. The Commissioner's independent officer status provides our office with the separation necessary to monitor activities of both government and other organizations that hold responsibilities under BC's Human Rights Code. This autonomy also provides the Commissioner with the power to advocate for change. This includes compelling the government and organizations to provide information they may not otherwise disclose, and providing recommendations for reform to the government and the legislature. BCOHRC's mandate to identify and address the underlying causes of inequality, discrimination, and injustice, coupled with the Commissioner's independent status, places our office in a unique position to investigate and raise awareness about the human rights impacts of misinformation and to advocate for changes to address them. These mini-bites focus on the connection between misinformation and human rights. In mini-bite 5, we'll look at some of the ways BCOHRC has advocated for change to address the impacts of misinformation. Thank you for participating in mini-bite 1. What is misinformation and why does it matter? If you enjoyed this session, we encourage you to share it with people who may benefit from learning more about misinformation. We also encourage you to download the PDF of this presentation along with the handout package if you haven't done so.